Last night, the Iranian regime launched a cold-blooded attack against 10 million civilians, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, men, women, and children of every faith. In an unprecedented act of aggression, Iran fired almost 200 ballistic missiles, forcing millions of people into bomb shelters. These scenes have not been witnessed since the Blitz in London. This was a deliberate attempt to strike at the very heart of our society, targeting the most sacred places in Israel, holy sites, mosques, synagogues, and churches. To Iran, there is no holy ground, no purity of life worth protecting. But even before the missiles rained down, the bloodshed had already begun. Just minutes before this assault, Palestinian terrorists opened fire on civilians, murdering 7 innocent people, young women, mothers protecting their babies, tourists. This is the reality we face every single day. Terror at our borders, missiles overhead, bullets in our streets. The Council must understand the situation Israel is forced to live in. We are under attack. This was not just an escalation. It was a direct assault on our very existence. The world watched silently as Iran funded and directed attacks against us for the past year, arming and training their proxies for decades, and the international community sat quiet. The silence, the routine call for de-escalation, only emboldened Iran. The result, last night's onslaught. Now the world must step up. Iran must pay a heavy price for this attack. Anything less is complicity. Do not be fooled by the fact that Israeli air defenses performed near miracles last night, saving countless lives beyond imagination. We also appreciate our partners for their assistance in defending against Iran's attack. Iran's failure does not diminish the evil behind their actions, the intentions. What we witnessed was nothing short of pure, unrestrained evil. This is the largest missile assault in Israel's history. They have openly launched hundreds of missiles into civilian areas. Today, the mask is off, and their evil is now laid bare for all the world to see. The Ayatollah's regime has revealed its true nature, not just as the world's greatest sponsor of terror, but as an active, direct aggressor. For years, Iran has armed terrorists and tyrannical regimes. We all know their weapons are responsible for the death of countless innocent civilians all across the globe, from Europe's war zones to terror attacks in the Middle East, from embassies in Latin America to assaults on US personnel. There is no corner of the world where Iran's blood-stained fingerprints cannot be found. They are not just Israel's enemy, they are an enemy of all civilized nations, an enemy to their own people who they brutally oppress, and an enemy to all nations they work to destabilize. Until now, they had largely operated in the shadows, using all their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. They carried out their dirty work. But last night, that mask was ripped away, the mask that their leaders wear in these very halls. Iran no longer hides behind others. They have proudly stepped into the open as the architects of chaos and destruction. And now the world can see their true face. Iran launched the largest ballistic missile attack in history, justifying it as a vengeance for the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah. That is the reason. In doing so, they relinquished any deniability and claimed full ownership over Hezbollah's actions. They say that. That is the reason for the attack, because of Nasrallah. So basically, they own the deeds of Hezbollah today. Let me remind you all. Allow me to remind you of some of Hezbollah's crimes against the world. In 1983, they bombed the United States barracks in Beirut, murdering 241 US servicemen. That same year, they bombed the US embassy in Beirut, murdering 63. In 1992, they bombed the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, killing 29 people and wounding 242. 2 years later, same place, Buenos Aires, they bombed the Jewish Community Center, murdering 85 and injuring over 300. Before 9/11, Hezbollah were responsible for more American deaths than any other terrorist organization. None of this even mentions the thousands of Lebanese people and Syrians that they brutally murdered at the altar of the tyrannical masters. In the past year alone, since October 8th, Hezbollah has launched over 9,000 missiles and rockets, over 1,000 anti-tank missiles and hundreds of attack drones. They have made over 70,000 Israeli civilians refugees in their own country. All the while, they have been attempting to infiltrate our communities to commit an October 7th-style massacre. Behind every murder, every rocket launch, every plot stands the Iranian regime. Let me be clear. Israel will defend itself. We will act. And let me assure you, the consequences Iran will face for their actions will be far greater than they could ever have imagined. Let me ask the Council and the entire world, how would any of you react if faced with such an attack? What would any nation do if hundreds of ballistic missiles were raining down on your civilians, your cities, your places of worship? The scale of this attack is unimaginable, and yet Iran is determined to escalate further. This is not just a threat to Israel, this is a threat to the entire world. We will defend our people, and our response will be swift and decisive. Those who attack us will face serious consequences. For every missile fired, we will respond with strength. For weeks, I have sat in this council warning of the growing threat Iran poses, urging you to take decisive action against this regime. I warned that Iran's desire for dominance would not stop at Israel's border, but the inaction of this council has emboldened them. And now the missiles falling on Israel are the direct result of that failure to act. The time for complacency is over. The Iranian regime has shed all deniability. They are no longer silent puppet masters. They are bloodthirsty aggressors, reveling in their violence and destruction. The world cannot afford to ignore this reality any longer. We demand immediate, crippling sanctions on Iran. The IRGC must be designated as the terrorist organization it is. Do not let yourselves be fooled by moderate Iranian president. I saw the way they were received here last week. The meetings, the clapping. Iran's policy is dictated by its supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And under his rule, the regime has grown more aggressive and murderous than ever. Iran's true face is one of terror, death, and chaos. They do not care about life, they do not respect their own religion, and they have targeted their fellow Muslims without hesitation. The time for empty calls, for de-escalation is over. How can you do that? To equate Israel, a nation simply wishing to live in peace, acting in defense of its people, with an aggressor bent on our destruction, is not just wrong. It is a grotesque and immoral distortion of reality. This is not a conflict between two equal sides. This is a battle between a sovereign country defending its right to exist and a regime that seeks nothing less than our extinction. And I repeat what I said last time. We have no border with Iran. We have no dispute with them. Ask yourself why they spend so much money and energy to build those rockets and to attack us. What is the reason behind it? calls for de-escalation is a false symmetry, an absurd equivalence between the protector and the destroyer. Tonight actually, the Jewish people will welcome the new year. The past year has been the most challenging in our country's history, but we will prevail. In this coming year, we will not stop until all 101 hostages are back at their families' tables. Let the world understand, Israel will defend itself, and will do so with justice and strength. Thank you, Madam President.